Since I waded into Stranger Things ships, I might as well broach the deep question of who, if anyone, Nancy Wheeler will end up with. She's um she has potential to be a bit of a heartbreaker, doesn't she? Now, of course, season one, and she was, well, actually just beginning to get with Steve, and it was, we were all sort of all but told that Jonathan Byers would be way better for her, because Steve was in kind of in his bully era, but of course within a season or so Steve became the most may was no longer the most popular kid in school, but instead became something much better, the most popular character in the show. And now I think and now of course people think Steve is too good for her, and I do kind of see where they're coming from. And I love Steve Harrington as much as anyone. And also I'm on the bandwagon that he was never as bad as he was made out to be in the first place. His bad behaviors were partly on the influence of his friends, and none of them were unmotivated, shall we say. Shall we say Jonathan taking a picture of her undressing, saying I saying and then signing Jonathan in the very bedroom that he had already snuck into on multiple occasions. And I mean, it is perfectly natural, normal, and even healthy for any guy to be upset in both in these cases. This does not, which obviously does not justify vandalism or property destruction. Well, anyway, I could go off on and and well, anyway, just say that the well, I could say more on Steve later, but of course, by season, of course, he turns around at the end, which is the only reason why Nancy stayed with him as long as she did. But of course, by the end of season two, she's with Jonathan, and but Steve is now friends with Dustin, and it appears that that's over. Nancy will be with Jonathan, but then season four, Jonathan is in California, yeah, and doesn't come back for spring break, and isn't going to go to college with her, and still hasn't told her that at the end of the season. Meanwhile, Steve is fully in his babysitter era and friends with Robin, and I do kind of think making Robin a lesbian may have been deliberately to keep him open for Nancy. See, so and we know in season four, it makes clear that the love triangle is still that is still absolutely a thing, and both Robin and Eddie, the 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 kind of ship Stancy. See, now just between the two of them, well, Jancy was sort of set up from the beginning, but of course, the Duffer brothers didn't intend for at all for Steve to become what he ha- he has. And will they bend to popular pressure? Although, of course, they're of course, there are now there are now people who just want Steve for themselves. But the thing is, but of course, Jonathan and Steve are not the only two options for Nancy. I mean, if she's going to work folks college and a career, being single could make sense. But also, has anyone considered Rancy, Robin x Nancy? I mean, season 4 they spent a lot of time together, and they teamed up for a side novel too. And so since it is suspected that her brother is at the very least could could Nancy could Nancy and Robin, maybe? I mean, they did in season 4, they worked really well together, not that, which doesn't necessarily mean, or or then again, there may be another, they're even more interesting option. Dancy, Dustin x Nancy. Hear me out. Hear me out. Now, I know Nancy is older, but the thing is, the age gap between them is the kind that's a big deal when you're a kid in school, but once you're older, 4 years, it really isn't that much. There are married couples. It's not uncommon to have, like, normal straight married couples where the wife is 4 years older. And you may recall back in the very beginning of episode we first see Nancy when Dustin goes up to say hi to her, and it's implied that Dustin has a little bit of a thing for Nancy then. And of course, at the end of season 2, Nancy dances with Dustin out of pity and support, and says that he was always her favorite of her brother's friends. Now, of course, it was only just for pity at the time, but things could change. And of the group, the thing is, Nancy is supposed to be very ambitious, intelligent, and so forth, and that doesn't really match with Jonathan, Steve, or Robin, who are all but quite a bit more complacent about life. But Dustin is the smartest of the group, and he like built his own radio tower, and he's and has, like, of the group, Dustin is the one most likely to make it, and become like kid, and like go far in the world. So yeah, Nancy and Dustin could really end up being the most compatible. Tell me what you think.